Visitors can find her by following the light she burns at dusk. She warms her back against the chimney as she waits for the new visitors. All different kinds of orphan dangles from her shawl, statues, trinkets. Each one holds a story that she guards and keeps safe.
I've come to lay my burden down. That year, it was a rough season, the coldest I'd ever made it through. I'd gotten a late start that morning when I made my first cast, and when I finally hoisted it onto the deck, it was a tangled up jackets, tied up black shoes, a couple of hats too. When I cast my net the second time, it didn't take too long for my net to fill. I struggled to pull it up, but when I did, a rotten smell came up with that made me sick. A great black horse, dead and rotting, reared up to the surface. I barely knew what I was doing when I made my third cast. I sat there over the water waiting to see what might come up next. I got nervous when I pulled on my net, and it was even heavier than the last time. As I dragged the net back up from the dark water, I saw what I had caught. It was about 7 feet long and 4 feet wide and covered with all kinds of marks. And without thinking, I set to prying it open like I wasn't even in charge of my own hands anymore. And as soon as the lid gave way, well, a thick fog began spilling out over the sides and flowed up into a column.
You are my fisherman.
Well, I'd heard stories of this woman before. Folks called her Annie Christmas, and she was a boat captain up the big river. The men on that water were all stone scared of Annie 'cause she was tough. One day, Annie took a trip on a great riverboat, and as evening turned to night, great clouds rolled across the sky and the waters began boiling underneath, and it wasn't long before the boat ran up on a sandbar. The captain hollered and raged at his crew, his clothes drenched in sweat and rain, and Annie admired this strong, terrible man, and for half a second she fell for him. But before she knew it, he turned on his heel and snapped at her, too. "Get the hell out of here, you crazy woman, or whatever you are. You're some giant bad luck cursing the weather against us." And right then, Annie jumped over the side and she was gone. The captain and crew were never heard from again, but then neither was Annie. They wrapped her body in an ebony shroud and laid her in a coal black coffin. 4 giant black horses carried her to the wharf, and a dozen mourners lined it. When darkness fell with no moon shining, the procession climbed up onto a barge and just floated out to sea. All vanished from sight, and geez, they were gone forever.
I remember when the time came to take tea to my own nanny.
Here you go, Teddy Bill. Are you okay, Teddy Bill?
Yes. I learned everything I know from my nana just by watching her. Keep your eyes watching me, Peanut. And when the time comes, you'll know everything you have to do.
What do you mean, Teddy Bill?
Well, I'm preparing myself my last story
Why?
for Mother Shannon.
Who's Mother Shannon?
Mother Shannon is the woman you go to tell your story when you have no one else in this world to tell. They say when you don't give your story away, your spirit can't move on. All you have to do is tell Mother Shannon your story for the last time and have an offering for her. And the will just to be free. It's not as bad as it seems. But bring me some of those leaves from over there, just in case. Careful. You're not careful.
It's just a squash, Teddy Bill.
Is it hurt? You never know, Peanut, if things are what they look like they are. I'm going to tell you a story that was told to me a long time ago about an old widow that lived on the other side of the mountain.
I have come to lay down my burdens. My husband left me in the lonely shadow of that mountain to go try his luck in the city. He was a no-good man, but the shame of it was he left me without any children to look after. Or to look after me, for that matter. One particularly hot day, as I was tilling my vegetable patch for planting, I heard the rustling of wings come to the stop atop of an old fence post. When I looked up, though, it was a man that stood there. In his palm he held 3 seeds which he gave to me. I followed his instructions and planted them right beside my pumpkins in the garden. By the next week, fully ripe gourds hung from them, and they were the biggest squash I had ever seen. I picked the 3 of them and set them up to dry out. When I came back at the end of the day, I just couldn't believe what met me. The kitchen swept and clean, and dinner prepared for me and on the table. The next morning I decided to hide at home. It was only a few minutes later that I heard rustling in the rafters. The gourds began to shiver and shake, and soon they sprouted heads, and then arms, and then legs. Right before my eyes, they changed shape until they were no longer gourds, but children. And then they began to turn to chores. When they finished up working, they began to help each other back up to the rafters. Wait! You don't have to turn back into gourds. I can take care of you. That was the first night we all ate dinner together, as a family. They were all so helpful. Well, all except Johnny. He was much lazier than the others and spent most of his time sitting by the stove where I had first put him. One day, Johnny got underfoot and tripped me. Haven't I told you to stay out of my way? I don't know what I was expecting. You're nothing but a hammer-headed gourd! The very next moment after I yelled that, the boy was gone. And instead there was a dried-out gourd shell sitting in his place. The other children stopped what they were doing and also turned back into gourds.
Wait a minute. Ghosts and walking squashes? They can't be real. They're just stories.
You never can know what's real until it happens to you. It's okay to have doubts. But sometimes the things you can't believe is more realer than you know.
Let me make you some more tea.
Where'd you get that? I can't let you do that. These needles are the only thing that stand between us and the boo hag.
Sleep just doesn't come to me the way it used to. I used to be the kind of woman that slept in one spot and woke the exact same way with the next sunrise, but not anymore. I haven't had bed nights like this since I was a little girl with my mama. And I have a strong feeling that Boo Hag has something to do with it all over again. Back then, I had some good looks to me. The summer I was 15, I caught the eye of the best catch in town. He had already caught the eye of Yvette, the meanest, nastiest living girl around. She was an okay-looking girl, but she was just so mean, it made her spirit ugly. Folks say that there were times at night where she would peel back her skin layer and set her ugly spirit out to walk all by itself. I could see her crawling up my stairway hand over foot as her burning eyes pierced the darkness. That night, like many nights after, her ghost would steal my skin layer while I slept. Many days passed this way, and each time she deposited some of her evil ugliness into my skin before she gave it back. I lost weight, and my skin lost its light. My hair began to gray. My soul had no rest for a long month, and my body was never permitted to lie still. My mama caught wise to what was going on, even though I couldn't tell her out loud. She could sense the ugly spirit floating around her house and decided to put a stop to it.
I know to fix this boo hag that's riding you. If we do it right and you follow what I say, then she can stay fixed and leave you alone. You go and get some sleep. And when you wake up, you'll feel better.
Even though my eyes were closed with sleep, I felt like I could see my mama setting about preparations to fix that old boo hag. First, she sprinkled the floor with salt so she could see footprints when Yvette's spirit creeped in across the room. Then as she sat, she counted out 33 needles, not less and not a one more, and set them on the bedside next to a bottle and a cork. As the moon passed behind the clouds, the sound of crunching salt signaled that ugly spirit's arrival. With a flick of her wrist, she scooped that spirit up and then put 32 needles into that stopper. The next morning, when I woke up, I felt refreshed. I even got a little bit of light back into my skin. That hag was clean gone. Her spell was already sliding off me. My mama had caught her spirit in that bottle the way her own mama showed her how. 'Cause you see, she pinned it down in the bottle with that needle, and so she couldn't tear loose. She put all those needles in the cork too. As long as I keep this bottle safe, she won't ever get out. But these days, I'm getting older, and I'm losing sleep again. The people of this generation, they don't know the tricks. They don't understand or believe the way my mama knew when we were growing up. My own children and grandchildren laugh at me. I'm fearful that no one will protect the bottle or its story when I'm no longer around to keep it.
Do they ever come back out of the woods? No. Then how do you know that this all happened? I knew it. I knew these were just stories. I bet nothing will happen if I pull these out of this bottle.
My spirit have always been here for those who needed me the most. And right now, child, that's you. I just regret that I didn't teach you earlier. And perhaps I could have prevented your sadness. Just like all those other peoples that passed their stories on to me. Now I pass my story on to you. And it is your job to keep these stories. I am Mother Shannon. Now, you are.
I will keep your stories safe.